Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
JoAnna Bautch of Milwaukee is the Democratic candidate in the 8th Assembly District. The primary is August 11th. JoAnna, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Well, I see on your campaign websites, you're a community organizer. Let me start with a pretty significant question. What should be done to combat the racial disparities that maybe some Americans are a lot more aware of now than 6 months ago? Please.
Yeah, I think there's a lot, the racial disparities that we're facing now. I hope folks aren't thinking that they just came out of nowhere because of this global pandemic we're facing. These issues we've been facing for a long time. In fact, I believe that COVID is just amplifying how much worse they are, right? Like, we need to look at our housing practices, access to affordable health care, and then once folks have that health care, access to the providers that can help them and provide the health care that they need, right? In addition to that, like environmental issues, people in my community oftentimes, turn on their kitchen sink or their bathroom faucet and brown water comes out. And they think that that's normal, right? They think, oh, just wait a little bit and then, it'll get clear again, right? Like, stuff like that's not normal. And the fact that people in my district think that it is like mind-boggling to me. I think that those are just some of the few topics that we need to touch on. Like I said, COVID-19 is just amplifying the racial disparities that my community has been facing for years.
Part of this debate is over police reforms. The governor introduced a 9-bill package that would ban chokeholds, ban no-knock warrants, uniform training standards for those that want to be police officers. Do you support the governor's package, or does it not go far enough, JoAnna?
I'm glad that he brought this package forward. I'm grateful for our Democratic Governor, Tony Evers, and Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. But it's not going far enough. I think that we need to do a lot more to, change the culture within these institutions, right? We can change practices and put forth laws, but is that changing the culture and how our law enforcement are responding to everyday citizens? Police officers are supposed to serve and protect, right? But if you talk to most of my neighbors or my constituents, they'll tell you that the presence of law enforcement makes them fearful. And so why is that? And what are we going to do to change that? And so, one of the first, we released a press release, not too long ago saying that one of the first bills I plan to introduce is going to repeal current Wisconsin state statute that allows law enforcement to continue to draw paychecks while they are suspended, right? Like right here in my community, we're looking at Officer Michael Mattioli, who murdered Joel Acevedo, and he's currently, on a paid vacation, right? That would not stand for myself or any of my constituents. So why is it okay for law enforcement to have that upper hand? Why do we treat them differently than the rest of us? It makes no sense to me.
Okay. New subject. With the pandemic, state and local governments are collecting less taxes. If the governor's right and we're going to collect $2 billion with a B less in general fund taxes, if you're in the assembly, you got a tough choice. Do you cut spending or do you raise taxes and fees? What's your position, please?
You're right, Steve. It is a tough choice. But, I think that we need to push our federal government to provide resources to make up for that lost revenue. Federal funding needs to go to our communities and to the people that are hurting right now. And I think one way we can, come back from this revenue loss is, taxing large corporation and making sure that the wealthiest Wisconsinites are paying their fair share. It's absolutely going to be a challenging budget cycle. But we need to make sure that we are prioritizing funding services that regular people, that working class people, that my constituents need to survive. I mean, we're talking about life and death here. So I support progressive solutions to bringing in revenue. I think that, ways we can look at that is making our state income tax be more progressive, right? As folks continue to make more money, they should be paying more taxes. And so I think that we have work to do here. I'm committed to doing the work that we need to make sure that my constituents and my neighbors have the resources and services that they need.
Okay, let's talk about reapportionment. The Constitution says the party in power will draw the next lines for congressional and legislative boundaries. The governor wants a People's Commission to draw it and then forward it to lawmakers to enact it into law. Do you support the governor's plan?
I do support the governor's plan. I think that, Republicans have drawn the most partisan lines in the country right here in Wisconsin. And we absolutely need to have a nonpartisan redistricting process. We need to put the power back in the hands of the people and let the people decide who is going to be their elected official and not the other way around. I'm running for office to prioritize people and prioritize putting power back into the hands of the people. And I think one of the ways we can do that is by combating these ridiculously partisan lines that we have right now. And, I look forward to being in the legislature and to push forward, this nonpartisan redistricting process through the legislature in the next session.
New subject. Illinois, as you know, has just legalized recreational marijuana. What's your position on both medical and recreational marijuana, please?
Yep. So I absolutely support the legalization of recreational and medical marijuana. But that doesn't come without making sure that we're looking at this through a racial equity lens, right? The legalization of recreational and medical marijuana also must include the decriminalization of folks that are being charged or currently incarcerated because of marijuana charges, right? And so I think that we need to release those folks and expunge their records. We can't legalize something and then continue to penalize folks for what is now legal, right? And in addition, when we're talking about bringing dispensaries here or legalizing marijuana and creating dispensaries, like also who are getting the licenses to create those dispensaries, right? Like who are able to start those businesses? I think that we need to prioritize Black and brown folks who apply for these licenses to start distilleries. And then I also think that, doing so would be a really great revenue income for Wisconsin, right? Like we're just talking about how are we going to make up for the loss of income, right? This is an opportunity for us to do that. Right now, Wisconsinites are driving to our neighbor states like Illinois to purchase, whatever. And we could keep those Wisconsinites here in Wisconsin and they could be contributing to our economy, right? Like growing our economy. And I think that that's what we need to do.
Okay, a couple questions on property taxes. Wisconsin is a high property tax state. That's the reason that there are limits or caps on what school districts and local governments can levy in property taxes, although you can exceed them if you pass the referendums. If you're in the assembly voting on the next budget, do you vote to keep those caps and limits on property tax levies?
Property tax is high here in Wisconsin. We don't, homeownership is dwindling here in my district. And I think that we need to put power into local government to look for other tools to raise revenue, right? Like sales tax. And like I was talking about earlier about income tax. Local government has been starving and we should put the power back in their hands to decide, what's best for their communities. They're the ones that are on the ground in the neighborhoods doing the work. And I believe that they can make the best decisions for their communities. And so I'm in favor of putting power back into our local government so that they can make the decisions on what's going to be best for their community.
So you would both get rid of the caps and give them alternative sources of revenue, local governments? JoAnna, right?
Absolutely. We need sustainable funding resources to fund our infrastructure. And I just think that we can do that by looking at other tools such as sales tax and income tax.
Where are you on the governor last year recommended raising the gas tax as a stable source of funding for highways? Could you vote to raise the 30.9 cent per gallon gas tax?
It's challenging for Democrats to talk about raising taxes, right? But I've been doing some looking into this and learning more about it, and I'm seeing that gas taxes, like you said, haven't been raised in the past 10 years. Our roads are crumbling. I just had a volunteer come to my district a couple weeks ago to help, and he hit a pothole and got a flat tire, right? We can't have that. I don't want to welcome people to my district and say, oh yeah, by the way, be careful for those potholes, right? So we need sustainable resources, sustainable funding to fund our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges. And like I was saying earlier, I want to look at other tools, like how else can we get money? We can't just rely on one resource, one source of funding. We need to be open to multiple revenues. And I think that one of the steps in the right direction and making sure that communities are funded to the levels that they need is, like I said, putting power back in local government. I think that our current GOP has done everything they can to strip power from our local elected officials, to hold it, in our state legislature, that we all know is extremely partisan.
Okay, a couple questions on the pandemic. It not only squeezes tax revenues, but it squeezes our healthcare systems. We've seen what hospitals in Wisconsin and across the nation are doing to fight COVID-19. If you're an assembly member voting on the next state budget, do you think hospitals should be an even greater priority than they might be in the current budget?
Steve, with healthcare, the first thing that I think we need to do and talk about is, accepting those federal dollars to expand Badger Care. There is no reason why any Wisconsinite should be walking around without healthcare coverage, especially right now that we are facing a global pandemic. So utmost, that's the number one priority. In addition, I think that we do need to prioritize funding to our hospitals. Here in Milwaukee, hospitals are closing within communities of color, within poor communities. We have a grassroots group here called SJAC that's working to save St. Joseph Hospital, which is located on the north side of Milwaukee. And that group is very near and dear to my heart. I was born at St. Joseph Hospital. My mother used to work there in the cafeteria. And so seeing that hospital close would be detrimental to our community. And so I absolutely think we need to prioritize, making sure that we have hospitals, facilities that have state-of-the-art equipment to serve our community and to make sure that we are all staying healthy. But I want to be a strong voice to make sure that we are prioritizing hospitals, within communities of color and rural areas, right, where we really need it.
Another question that comes up is the liability of businesses. If a business follows CDC rules and regulations, try to protect its customers and employees, should they be immune from frivolous lawsuits?
I think that if businesses are following guidelines of health experts and the CDC, they don't have to worry about frivolous lawsuits. I think that the GOP is bringing this up as a topic to divide us, right? To divide people and business owners, when in reality, we all just want to stay safe. And so I think that if our businesses are, like I said, implementing the safety precautions that are recommended by the CDC, then they don't have anything to worry about. Now, if we're seeing, a time where frivolous lawsuits are coming forward, I'm open to hearing about them and learning to see what we need to do. But I really don't think it will be an issue if we can really just follow the guidelines that have been presented to us so that we can all stay safe ourselves and make sure that our friends, family, and neighbors are staying safe too.
New subject. When a school district or a local government wants to approve a major public works project, should they be required to give a preference to Wisconsin businesses? In 2015, out-of-state contractors got public works projects worth $72 million. That more than doubled to $146 million in 2018. Should they have to give preference to Wisconsin businesses?
Absolutely. We need to grow our economy here, and we need to make sure that we are providing good, family-supporting, strong union jobs to our fellow Wisconsinites. I absolutely think that we need to prioritize Wisconsin companies and then prioritize Wisconsin workers. My top priority is making sure that the working class, making sure that working people get what they deserve and what they need to have healthy, safe lives and be able to support for themselves and their families.
Okay, we've talked about a lot of issues. Is there any one issue we haven't touched on that's a key part of your campaign, JoAnna?
I think that, all these issues are really important to my community and my campaign. One of the things, we keep talking about revenue and how are we going to fund our communities? How are we going to fund our infrastructure? All these things, right? But let's talk about wages then, right? We could have a strong economy if all Wisconsinites had access to livable wage jobs, right? We've been fighting for so long for $15 an hour that's irrelevant now. It's not even $15 an hour. It's $20 an hour. I think that we need to make sure that, we're providing these family supporting jobs, green jobs and for all Wisconsinites across the state. And I really think that that's, one of our core issues, that if we could just change the way things are and give people an opportunity to survive, right? Most Wisconsinites aren't asking for a lot. They just want to be able to survive. And that's a lot of people in my community. And I'm going to fight hard for them to have that, for them to have those opportunities.
And then finally, a last question, just quickly. You want to highlight any differences between you and your opponent and the primary August 11?
Yeah. You talked about it earlier, Steve. My background as a community organizer, I think really makes me stand out as a candidate. I'm a regular person that's from this community. I'm born and raised on the near South Side. I went to our MPS schools, and my entire adult career, I've worked in nonprofits that are servicing the people of the near South Side. I've been in conversations with people that don't have health care, that can't find a job, that are making minimum wage. But also, I've been that person. I've been the person that doesn't have health care. I've been the person, that comes from a poor family, a single parent household, a parent who's worked in the food industry, right? And so I think that my story resonates with a lot of my neighbors and a lot of my voters. And, in addition, unfortunately, my Democratic opponent, she's not really running on Democratic values. Unfortunately, we've seen that she supports things like voter ID, and we know that voter ID is one of the largest things that stops people from my district, Black and brown people, from getting to the polls. We talk about gerrymandering and putting forth a nonpartisan redistricting process, and all of that is connected to things like voter ID, right? We need fair maps, but we also need people to be able to access their ballot and know that when they cast a ballot, their vote is going to count. And so in this moment, we need bold Democratic leadership, not Democrats that are willing to stand with Robin Vos and Donald Trump to support things like voter ID. And so I am a true blue progressive, and I've never had to change my ways to fit in with anybody or any crowd. And I'm always going to lead with my values.
Thank you. JoAnna Bautch of Milwaukee is the Democratic candidate in the 8th Assembly District. JoAnna, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.